Hey there guys, Nordic Warrior here. So, wasn't going to bother making a video tonight, but I got a little bit of time on my hands, got a nice little hot cup of tea here, and yeah, just for whatever reason I felt like talking about this situation. I don't even know why, because I really feel as if it's a bad idea even wasting energy on it, but let's get into it anyway. That's some good tea. Alright, here we go. So, Conor Benn, Chris Eubank, blah-de-blah-de-blah, surprise, surprise, the fight isn't going to happen. The main reason why is because Conor Benn supposedly failed a VADA drug test. Apparently he tested positive for a substance, I forget the name of the substance, but it's a substance that's apparently used in women's fertility. And the reason, well, so I'm told, the reason why a athlete would use it, a male athlete, is because it sort of counteracts the negative effects of taking synthetic testosterone. So, like, if you're taking synthetic testosterone to kind of help you increase your performance in training or in a fight or a competition, supposedly this substance is going to counteract the negative effects. So basically, because you're putting testosterone in your body artificially, your body's going to stop producing it, so you could end up having your balls shrink or whatever. So this substance will apparently help regulate that and help your balls essentially produce testosterone themselves, so you won't experience the negative effects in the long run. Something along those lines. I'm not a doctor, I'm not I'm not a PED expert, I've no idea. This is just what I've been told, this is what I've heard, but I digress. So yeah, the fight isn't going to happen. So, those of you who had basically read my comments that I'd been leaving all over the place on many videos before this fight even became official, I did make a prediction video, but I was kind of half-heartedly making that video, you know. I wasn't really serious. I was only kind of hypothetically assuming that the fight was going to happen. If you read any of my comments anywhere, you'll know that I never thought this fight was going to happen. I said from day one it was never going to happen. It was a massive publicity stunt. It had all the warning signs, all the makings of a bait and switch. As soon as this fight was first even talked about, before it was even signed, everybody was pouring cold water on it. The only thing that was being talked about in relation to this fight, there was no technical breakdowns from the mainstream boxing media. There was no hype. There was no needle between the two, you know. There was no real serious build-up that you see with these domestic grudge matches. No, all anybody was ever talking about from the beginning was, is Eubank Jr. going to be able to make weight? He's going down to 157. This is dangerous. You know, you had Eubank Jr.'s dad coming out and saying that the fight shouldn't happen, it's a disgrace, and oh, it's dangerous for him. We could see another death in the ring. I don't want to lose another child. I mean, was the fight really going to happen? I mean, do you guys really believe that this fight was going to happen when you had literally the dad of one of the fighters coming out and tugging at your heartstrings and saying, oh, I'm scared for his life, it shouldn't happen? What way is that to try and sell a fight? Okay, do you think if Chris Eubank Jr. really signed a contract and was really willing to go through with this fight, do you really think his dad would be out here trying to pour cold water on the fight and trying to put a downer on it? No. Look, as far as the fight, I always believed it was a publicity stunt, alright? We've seen this before, okay? Tyson Fury versus David Haye was the same situation as far as I'm concerned. Was never going to happen. Okay, there have been other examples, but whatever, I digress. The fight wasn't happening, in my opinion. It just had, there was too many warning signs. It had all the makings of a bait and switch, you know, because boxing is a sport that is anti-consumer. It's a sport that likes to tease us with interesting fights and interesting prospects in boxing, but it really takes them away. You know, Conor Benn, I mean, looking at the fight from Conor Benn's perspective and from the perspective of his team, Conor Benn is a bum, right? Let's be honest, right? Us hardcore boxing fans, us who watch the sport, follow the sport, understand the sport, know about the ins and outs, know about the business of the sport, we know that Conor Benn is one of the weakest out of the domestic prospects that Matchroom have got in their stable currently. You know, he's definitely not in the upper echelon of prospects in British boxing. You know, he's a classic example of just a hype job who is living off his father's name. He's basically what Chavez Jr. was. You know, he's basically what Campbell Hatton is. You know, he's just a guy who's literally the only reason anybody's interested in him is because of his dad. Alright, Conor Benn had no interesting amateur career to speak of, right? He never really beat anybody before turning pro. He didn't show any real promise. You know, in the early days of his pro career, he looked like absolute shite against journeymen, right? There was no hype about him. There was no, you know, he didn't come through the ranks on small hole shows, building his name, building his profile. No, the only reason people know who Conor Benn is because of his dad. That's literally the only reason. So, you know, they're going to really need to give us something special. They're going to have to take their time to really build this guy up and get him as many fixed fights as they can. And, you know, just build up his resume, pad out his record before they sacrifice him, before they throw him under the bus. Do you really think they were going to send him in there to get his arse kicked by Eubank Jr.? A guy who's basically, at this stage of his career, a laughingstock, right? He's not respected among the British boxing contingent anymore. You know, Eubank Jr. is seen as a guy who showed promise, but became a complete waste of talent. You know, he absolutely disgraced himself in his last fight. Right, he's an unlikable prick. He's a narcissist, and again, he's in the same position, or he was in the same position in the early days of his career that Conor Benn is in now, except he failed. He failed when he reached that level. Now, I'm pretty sure he isn't gonna want to go out on a loss to Conor Benn, you know, who's half his size. And likewise, Matchroom and Eddie Hearn, they're not stupid, right? They're not gonna sacrifice Conor Benn to Chris Eubank Jr., right? They were never going to let that happen. So, as far as I'm concerned, yeah, this fight was a publicity stunt and it was never going to happen. Whatever. You know, guys, in regards to the failed drug test, this is something that has gotten a lot of people up in arms. I mentioned it earlier in the video. So this drug, it's a female fertility drug, right, basically. That's what it is. And it really got me thinking, do you guys remember when Conor Benn had that weird thing he posted on social media where he was getting like a beard implant? You know, he was getting like a fake beard, and he was like posting it around looking all proud when really it was just, it looked ridiculous, you know, and he got ridiculed for it. But he didn't seem to care. He seemed to relish the ridicule. And if you look at Conor Benn's physique, you look at his body, and you look how he's just absolutely covered head to toe in tattoos, and the guy just looks really feminine and really weird, and it's making me wonder, and I know I'm going to lose some of you here, and I'm only sort of being half serious, but is Conor Benn, is he one of these gender benders? Like, I haven't been able to find any pictures of him from his childhood. Maybe there are some, but I haven't really looked that hard. But is he one of these FTMs? Like, is he one of these FTM gender bending weirdos that have been sort of raised in the industry and are being pushed upon boxing? You know, I kind of suspected that about Clarissa Shields, for example. I suspected she was one of them. Is Conor Benn one of those types? You know, I don't really know how to put it into words. Is he one of these trannies, basically, that's trying to infiltrate boxing? I don't know, because, again, I don't know if the female fertility drug that he's taking, I don't know if it's true that that's used by athletes to help them naturally increase testosterone after taking synthetic testosterone. I don't know if that's true. That could just be a cover story, but if he really is taking that substance, it's very unusual. And the way that people are reacting to this drug test, to me, I've never understood this. I really haven't, why people get so up in arms about failed PED tests in boxing. And more to the point, I'm always skeptical about failed drug tests in boxing. I don't even believe these guys are tested. Alright, I've said for a long time, I believe that drug testing in boxing is something that's weaponized. Well, in fact, I don't believe it. I know it. I know that there have been several instances in boxing where drug testing has been used specifically to weaken and discourage your opponent. I mean, if you want some confirmation of that, just look into Floyd Mayweather's career, right? Look at what happened with Floyd Mayweather and Shane Mosley and Pacquiao and Cotto and Canelo and Guerrero and all those guys he fought. Like that whole era of Floyd's latter career, and look at how drug testing was used in order to deplete his opponents. It happens in boxing, and that's just, for me, that's the main reason for drug testing. It's used to deplete your opponents. So when I see a fighter who's an A-side fighter fail a drug test, it's something that I always, I guess you could say that the pessimistic, like cynical nature of me comes out, and I think to myself, what's going on here? Because it's very well known that Matchroom and Eddie Hearn and DAZN, of course, are a very, very influential entity in boxing, right? They have a lot of people in their pocket in high places, judges, referees, commissions, you know, just officials, whatever. They have a lot of people in their pocket. We know that the UK anti-doping agency can be bought, and we know that VADA can be bought. So Conor Benn and Chris Eubank both agreed to do VADA testing, despite the fact they're already being tested by UKAD. Somehow the UKAD test comes up clear, there's no issue with it, but the VADA test comes up positive. Now, we've seen that before, haven't we? Right? We saw that with Dillian White, except it was the other way around. It was, I believe the VADA test was clear and the UKAD test was positive. So what on earth is that all about? How can one testing organisation have you clear and another one have you positive? It just makes me wonder. Look, I don't think the fight was ever going to happen. And a lot of people are saying that Conor Benn, you know, is a cheat, he should be banned, you know, putting people's lives at risk, whatever. It would be very, very hypocritical of me to come out and say that, I have to be honest, because I have to be consistent. I've always said from day one, I think that PEDs are totally fine, I have no problem with them. I think that people who do have a problem, look, let me be as blunt as possible. I think that people who are against PEDs in boxing are absolute authoritarian pieces of shit, right? It's nobody's business but yours what you want to put in your body, all right? If you're an athlete, right, you're trying to get in shape, you're trying to enhance your performance, you're trying to be the best athlete you can be, right? You're looking for every single edge possible, right? You're looking for something to give you that extra 5-10%. I don't see that as a negative, right? There's absolutely zero, I mean zero evidence out there. There's been zero studies done. There's zero proof whatsoever that performance-enhancing drugs make sport more dangerous, okay? There's absolutely no data to support it, okay? There's been no deaths in the ring on record that have ever, and I'm talking about professional boxing here. Maybe this has happened in unlicensed boxing, something along these lines, but I'm talking about professional boxing. As far as we know, as far as we understand it, there has never been any recorded deaths that involve PEDs, okay? There's been plenty of recorded deaths involving people getting punched in the head, because getting punched in the head, I don't know if you guys know this, but getting punched in the head is hazardous. Okay, it flipping hurts, and it can give you brain damage. So, if you don't like people being punched in the head, if you think that it's hazardous, and you think that these guys need to be coddled and protected, and they shouldn't be put at risk, why are you watching boxing? It doesn't make any sense. Why don't you protest boxing? Why don't you go out there and protest the sport, and say this is barbaric and it needs to stop? Okay, we don't live in the age of gladiators. So, why do we have this sport where people get punched in the head? That should be your position if you're being consistent. Me, on the other hand, I quite like seeing people get punched in the head. Now, yeah, in all cases, it's not nice, but I'm a boxing fan, okay? I grew up around boxing. It's something that I'm nostalgic about, so I enjoy watching it. And it's a sport at the end of the day. It's a gentleman's sport. It's a noble sport. So, why would I be sitting here virtue signaling and going off my head and, you know, acting the big un over somebody taking drugs to try and increase their performance in the ring. It's ridiculous, man. So yeah, I don't care. I would have loved to have seen a roided up Conor Benn knock Chris Eubank Jr. into next week, and vice versa, because I think both guys are pathetic hype jobs living off their father's name. And that would have been the good thing about this fight, should it happen, is that at least one hype job is going to get their arse kicked either way. And the fact that people are actually celebrating the fact that the fight didn't happen, I find it a little bit strange. Now, what also occurred to me is that in the build-up to the fight, like I said, there were so many warning signs that the fight wasn't going to happen. You had Chris Eubank eating flipping steak and fried chicken just weeks before the fight was supposed to happen, when he's supposedly trying to make weight, right? He's supposedly, I mean, even making weight for the limit that you usually fight at, you wouldn't be eating steak and fried chicken that close to a fight. But I mean, making a weight that you've never made before in your entire professional career, considerably less so than what you've been making recently, you're not going to be eating like that. I don't care if he was trolling, I don't care if he was taking the piss, whatever. It was, in my opinion, it was probably just a bit of predictive programming, because that's what these occult weirdos do. Whatever, you know, this video's gone on way too long. I just thought I'd give my rambling thoughts. And yeah, it is disappointing, because when you take the time to make a video and make a prediction and whatnot, it feels like a complete waste of energy. Like, boxing is just such a complete waste of energy, man. It really is. I mean, you waste so much time talking about these fights that you know are never going to happen, and then people celebrate when they don't happen. I mean, what has happened to boxing fans, man? I really don't understand it. So yeah, whatever. Thanks for watching, guys. God bless.